Today we're going through the top 10 bourbons under $50. Let's do it. Welcome to Average Joe's Whiskey. My name is Joe Carpel. Thank you so much for watching, and you are in for a real treat today because today we are going through the top 10 bourbons under $50. But I have a little surprise. At least it's not really a surprise because I'm announcing it at the beginning. When I was putting this list together, I couldn't narrow it down to 10 bottles. So I really have like 14 or 15 bottles. So really this is like the top 14 bottles under $50, but I thought that title would look kind of stupid. So it's the top 10 bourbons under $50, but it's really the top 14, whatever. The point is, I've got a rack of bourbons here that I'm gonna try and go through. And I've got one other little change up here. I am just gonna list these in order of price. Trying to determine which of these bottles is best is gonna be impossible. And it's too many to do a blind tasting with. So I'm just gonna put these in order of price. I think that makes the most sense. All right, let's get into it. I'm actually drinking one of my favorite bourbons on this list, and I will tell you what it is when I get to that bottle. All right, let's get this going. All right, so we are going through this list, as I said, from the lowest price to the highest price. They're not in order of which one I think is best. We're just going from lowest to highest. First up, we have, coming in at right around $35, Cooper's Craft 100. So this is an absolutely excellent bourbon for the price. $35, it is a Brown-Forman product. It is, I believe it's aged about 4 or 5 years, but they chisel the barrels to allow more surface area, so the whiskey can interact with more of the surface area in the barrel. Gives it this really strong, prominent vanilla note. This thing is just like a vanilla explosion, but it's got a great mouthfeel and it's really delicious, especially for a $35 bottle. You know what? I'm actually gonna have a sip of this one. Oh my God. If you looked up Vanilla Bomb in the dictionary, there would be a picture of Cooper's Craft 100 there. It's got a slight bitter note on the back of the palate, but other than that, this thing is virtually a flawless pour. Really impressive $35 bottle. All right, let's keep this moving. Next up, all right, so I have 14. All right, so that was number 14. I got 14 bottles. We're counting down from 14. All right, so number 13, coming in at $36, we have, technically not a bourbon, Jack Daniel's Bonded. So obviously this is a Tennessee whiskey, which is very similar to a bourbon. They are made the exact same way. The only difference is that it goes through the Lincoln County process, which does not technically exclude it from being a bourbon. The thing that excludes it from being a bourbon is the fact that it's a Tennessee whiskey. So we're kind of talking semantics here. For comparative purposes, I'm gonna consider this a bourbon. But really, this is a list of bourbons and a Tennessee whiskey, technically. Anyway, Jack Daniel's Bonded came out a couple of years ago. It's a great whiskey for 35 bucks or 36 bucks, whatever it is. I also really like the entire Jack Bonded series. So they have the triple mash, which I am absolutely in love with. And they have the Bonded Rye, which they released last year. And both of those I think are excellent. This regular Jack Bonded I think is excellent. It is super sweet. I think it's about 7 years old. You get that little bit of that Jack Daniel's banana bread on the nose, and it's just a super sweet palate, nicely balanced with some oak. Excellent, excellent whiskey for the price. All right, let's keep it moving. Coming in at $39.99, we have number 12 on the list, Knob Creek 9. So Knob Creek 9 is one of my go-to pours at a bar. Almost every bar will have it, and it's really sweet. You get some brown sugar, some caramel, some of that Jim Beam nuttiness. It is an excellent bourbon for around $40. Sometimes you can find it cheaper, but this is right around $40 in my area. All right, so number 11, another $39.99 bottle. We have Maker's Mark 101. This bottle really just overperformed in a blind tasting that I did. I was super impressed. I completely forgot how good it was. But for $39.99, 101 proof, wheated bourbon from Maker's Mark, excellent, excellent deal. Maker's Mark bourbons are typically about 6 years old. They just kind of age it until they like the flavor. But yeah, this is absolutely one of, if not my favorite, readily available bottle of Maker's Mark. I absolutely love this thing. You know what? I'm gonna pour myself a little bit of this one too. You know, I also need a bottle to take with me on a trip. I might grab this one. This is a hell of a deal. All right, so we're heading into the top 10, even though it's not really a top 10 because these are just in order of price. Coming in at $45, although it is often on sale for $39.99. I still see it a lot of places for $39.99, but Russell's 10 year. So Russell's 10 year, a 10-year-old bourbon for around $40. Come on, such a great deal. 90 proof, a little bit lower than some of the other Wild Turkey products that I really like, but it is a really balanced palate, phenomenal nose, great all-around bourbon. Also a great introduction bourbon to people who are kind of just getting started. You can never go wrong with a Russell's Reserve 10 year. Number 9. I thought this one was like $40, but it is now $45 in my area. The king of bootleggers himself, George Remus. So this is an MGP, or excuse me, this is a Ross and Squibb bourbon. Comes in at 94 proof, 5 to 6 years old. I wanted to have at least one on here that was not from Kentucky. And I'm a big fan of MGP whiskeys, especially their Remus line. A lot of the Remus Repeal Reserves are really good. The Remus Gatsby Reserves are great. Very expensive, but great. But for around $40, $45, I think this Remus is really interesting. I have a little sip of this one. So on a lot of MGP whiskeys, I get like a little bubblegum note that I really like. This one is it's very rye forward. So it's a higher rye bourbon. Really interesting nose. Really nice on the palate too. So MGP coming in at number 9. Number 8. So this was $40 for a long time. I think they just raised the price to like $43. Another 10-year whiskey, this one from Buffalo Trace, Eagle Rare. So some people might get upset about this one just because Eagle Rare can be very hard to find. One of the benefits of living in Virginia is that you get to buy Eagle Rare for retail price like once every 2 months, or at least you used to be able to until they started doing weird stuff at the ABC. But this is another bourbon that's an excellent like introduction to people who are just kind of getting started. It's really sweet. It's got great balance with the oak. Comes across real fruity. Taking a sip of this one as well. 90 proof, so same as the Russells. It's not gonna light your face on fire. It's very easy to drink, very crushable. The nose is just so fruity. A lot of people get grape in this. I can definitely see where people get those grape notes. I also get apple in this one a lot, like a nice sweet apple. But yeah, obviously this one can be hard to find and you will often see it marked up in a lot of states to like $50, $60, sometimes even $80 to $100, which is pretty crazy. It's a great bourbon. It's not worth over $60, I would say, but it is a great bourbon and definitely deserving to be on this list. Let's keep it moving. All right, so I know the Eagle Rare might have upset some people. While we're pissing people off, let's just keep it going, okay? Number 8 on the list, Elmer T Lee. I know, okay? Listen, I bought this bottle for $37.99. Since then, they have raised the price in Virginia to $44.99. The problem is you can only get it like once a year and you have to wait in line if you get lucky enough to be at the place where it is. But if you can ever find this for under $50, it is amazing. That's actually what I was drinking at the start of the video. Oh my God. Now this bottle will often sell for like $200 plus. That's crazy. This is a 90 proof single barrel mash bill number 2 from Buffalo Trace. Mash bill number 2 is their high rye recipe, which is believed to be around 15% rye. I think it's much better than Blanton's personally. I do absolutely love it. There's no way it's worth $200 or $300, whatever they're charging for it. But if you can find it for like under $100, I would say it's worth picking one up because it is really good, really good. Yeah, this just has one of the most phenomenal noses for a $40 bottle that I've ever come across. Like, this almost smells like a Michter's 10 rye. That's probably not a fair comparison, but it does smell amazing. It's very mouth coating. You get some citrus, you get some cherry, some vanilla, some oak. It's just an amazing bourbon if you can get it for under $100. If you can get it for under 50, buy as many as you can. All right, I'm sorry, this was number 7. Elmer T Lee was number 7. Number 6. So number 6 is $49.99 in my area. I see it pretty regularly for $44.99, sometimes even $39.99. And you're gonna have to bear with me because I do not have the right bottle, but Michter's Bourbon. As you can see, this is the Michter's Sour Mash. This is not the Michter's Bourbon. But I thought Michter's Bourbon really deserved to be on this list, and I just realized that I don't have a bottle at the moment. So I have replaced it with this Sour Mash for demonstration purposes. But number 6 on the list is the Michter's US1 Bourbon. To be honest, the Sour Mash is good too, and the Michter's American, I like both of those as well. Neither one technically is a bourbon, but I do like these. Actually, I'm gonna have a sip of this one. But the Michter's US1 Bourbon comes in at 91.4 proof, I believe. This Sour Mash is 86 proof, a little bit lower. But the Michter's Bourbon is another great one to kind of get people started into the world of bourbon. It is really sweet, it's got a great mouthfeel, it's got a lot of caramel, and it's nicely balanced with some oak. Man, the Sour Mash smells pretty good too. And this is just a super crushable bottle, as is the bourbon, as is the American whiskey. But anyway, Michter's US1 Bourbon, not the Sour Mash, the bourbon, comes in at number 6 on the list. Number 5. So number 5, we have another high rye recipe coming in. This one from Four Roses, the Four Roses Single Barrel. So Four Roses Single Barrel is one of the first bourbons that I really fell in love with. Somebody gave it to me for my birthday, and it's just a brown sugar cinnamon bomb. This thing is so delicious that the first time I tried it, I was in my early 20s, I think, and I thought, wow, this single barrel bourbon is so much better than all the other bourbons that I've tried. And then all I did was buy single barrel bourbons for like 2 years after that. But this is the one that started me down that single barrel rabbit hole. This bottle's like $50 in Northern Virginia. It's aged about 7 to 9 years, I believe, and it's just great. A lot of flavor, a lot of cinnamon, a lot of brown sugar, some vanilla. Delicious bourbon for under $50. Four Roses Single Barrel, number 5 on the list. All right, guys, we're in the top 4, okay? We're almost done, hang in there. Number 4, Bardstown Origin Wheated Bourbon. So this sells for like $49.99 in my area. It is aged 6 years, and it is a wheated bourbon from Bardstown. Mash bill 68% corn, 20% wheat, 12% malted barley. I just did a blind tasting recently of some of the newer wheated bourbons that hit the market, and this thing came out on top. Excellent, excellent wheated bourbon for a very reasonable price. All right, let's keep it moving. All right, so again, I'm doing these in order of price. So these last 3 are all $49.99. So price is gonna be the same. So number 3, we have Maker's Mark Cask Strength. Now I already had the 101 on the list. This Maker's Mark sells for about $10 more, $49.99 instead of $39.99 for the 101. But this is an excellent cask strength bourbon for under $50. It's really an amazing deal. One thing I like about Maker's Mark, they have a lower barrel entry proof, so all of their cask strength bourbons come out around 110 proof, and they are all really delicious. If you're just starting to get into cask strength bourbons, this is a great one to start with, just because it's not gonna light your face on fire at 109.7 proof. But Maker's Mark Cask Strength, excellent bourbon. Also around 6 years old. All the Maker's Marks are around 6 years old, except for the cellar aged, but great, great bourbon for the price. I wonder how many times I said great, great bourbon for the price. They're all great bourbons for the price. All right, number 2. Number 2, we have Heaven Hill bottled in bond. So this is a 7-year bourbon from Heaven Hill. This thing is delicious. I absolutely love this. So this is allocated in Virginia, which makes no sense. These used to be fairly hard to find, but I see these all over the shelves in Maryland and every other state that I go to. Virginia, as far as I know, is like the only place that has them allocated. But for $50, this is a delicious pour. Wow, what a great nose on this. You just get a touch of that Heaven Hill nuttiness, but it's got a lot of cherry and a lot of brown sugar. It's got some spice on the palate. It's got a great mouthfeel. I can't say enough about Heaven Hill bottled in bond. Excellent 7-year bourbon for an excellent price. And number 1 on the list, it's not number 1 because it's my favorite, although it is one of my favorites. It's number 1 on the list because it's $52.99 in my state. However, I decided to include it on the list because I know you can find it around the country for $50 or less still. I'm talking about Wild Turkey Rare Breed. Always one of my favorites, always delicious. It's a blend of 8 to 12-year-old bourbons, comes in at 116.8 proof. Another excellent cask strength bourbon that you can get for a very reasonable price. I was hesitant to put this at number 1 because I've had this as number 1 on my top available bourbon list. However, it's the most expensive bourbon on this list and I'm doing it in order of price. So I guess it had to be number 1. Otherwise it would screw up my entire system. If I were doing this just based on my favorite bourbons on this list, then I would have to have Elmer T Lee at the front, which is not fair because most people cannot find it for under $50. So I put it in order of price, and this happened to be the most expensive in Virginia. But you cannot beat Wild Turkey Rare Breed as far as a value bourbon, cask strength, under $50. Come on, man. It's so good. So good. Oh my God. Truly, I don't drink this enough. I have a backup bottle of this just sitting on the shelf. I haven't even finished this one. But this is just a great, great bourbon for the price. Somebody should go back and take a sip of their drink every time I said great, great bourbon or excellent bourbon. You will be hammered. All right, guys. Well, that's all I got for today. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you haven't taken the time to hit the like button or the subscribe button, please do it. It doesn't cost you anything. You're gonna help a new channel. You're gonna help me, and I'm important to myself, sort of. If you have an idea for a bottle that was not on this list, please leave it in the comments. Or if you have an idea for a video, leave that in the comments. I love hearing from you guys. I seriously do. I really appreciate everybody taking the time to watch, to hit the like button, and to subscribe. But anyway, that's all I got. Thank you guys. I really appreciate all of you. Have a good night.